Live NFL trivia every Wednesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge for a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. Am I crazy, or did yesterday's game between the Buffalo Bills and Tampa Bay Buccaneers seem really familiar? Like, eerily familiar? If you're like me, or you're a longtime Bucs fan, when Buffalo was mounting their fourth quarter comeback that seemed incredibly improbable, you immediately drew flashbacks to that 2003 game that the Buccaneers and Indianapolis Colts famously played on Monday Night Football. The parallels, with it being a 3-possession fourth quarter comeback to send it into overtime against the defending Super Bowl champion Buccaneers, were there. The storyline was there. This was that Monday Night Miracle all over again. Now obviously, the final result was different. The Buccaneers actually won this game, unlike the 2003 one, where they truly completed the choke job and embarrassed themselves to the shock of the entire country. But even though the final result was different, everything else leading up to that was too similar and too eerily familiar that it truly deserves a deep dive. Because when you look closely at it and truly examine the parallels and similarities between the two games, what happened in the 2021 game between the Bills and Buccaneers and what happened in the 2003 game between the Colts and the Buccaneers was almost identical. Before I talk about the similarities in question, for those not watching this in the immediate aftermath of the game, here's some context to understand not just how the Bills-Bucs game played out, but how the Colts-Bucs game from nearly 2 decades prior played out as well. Let's start with the most recent game. It's December 12, 2021, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are hosting the Buffalo Bills at Raymond James Stadium in this absolutely critical Week 14 matchup. This is a big game for both teams. For the Bills, the AFC is an absolute dogfight, and they're fighting for their playoff lives. If they want any shot at winning the division, and if they want to improve their chances at making the playoffs at a time where 9 other teams have a winning record, they need this win. As a side note, to learn more about the game that the Bills had earlier in the season against the Tennessee Titans, click the card in the upper right corner. As for the Buccaneers, while they pretty much have the NFC South on lockdown, as that division is a mess, they need a win here if they want to keep pace with the Arizona Cardinals and Green Bay Packers for the number 1 seed in the conference and the lone bye into the divisional round. And early on, the Buccaneers were looking like the dominant side, just as they had looked for most of the season. Tampa Bay scored 3 touchdowns in the first half, with Leonard Fournette scoring from 47 yards out in the first quarter, Mike Evans scoring from 13 yards out in the second quarter, and then Tom Brady following that up a few minutes later in the quarter with a quarterback sneak from 1 yard out. At halftime, the Buccaneers led 24-3, thanks to great offensive play and some questionable game management and play calling by Buffalo, where they called a grand total of 0 running plays in the entire first half. Why that was the case, I'm not entirely sure. But it was obvious that Buffalo had its work cut out for them if they wanted to come back and have any shot at winning this one. Sure enough, Buffalo found a way to claw back into the game. After an 18-yard touchdown run by Josh Allen in the third quarter, the Bills only trailed by 14, though any hopes of a possible comeback seemed dashed after Ryan Succop hit a 24-yard field goal with just over 11 minutes left in the game. Buffalo had to make up a 3-possession deficit in the fourth quarter with practically no time left. Somehow, they did just that. After Dawson Knox scored from 15 yards out to make it 27-17, Gabriel Davis scored from 4 yards out to make it 27-24, and Tyler Bass hit a 25-yard field goal to make it 27-all, the Bills seemed to have done the improbable. On the road against the defending Super Bowl champions, they had erased the 3-possession deficit. Never in the history of the NFL has anything like that happened before. Right? Well, not quite. Let's hop back in time 18 years. It's October 6, 2003, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are taking on the Indianapolis Colts in this nationally televised Monday Night Football matchup. The Bucs enter this game at 2-1, looking to be above 500 at the quarter mark and looking to keep pace with the surprising 4-0 Carolina Panthers atop the NFC South. As for the Colts, they enter this one undefeated with a 4-0 record, and are not only looking to have a 2-game lead in the division, but are looking to keep pace with the 5-0 Kansas City Chiefs for the number 1 seed in the AFC. It is a great matchup on paper that is worthy of being played under the lights in the marquee time slot at the time. And early on, the Buccaneers were looking like the dominant side. Tampa Bay scored 3 touchdowns in the first half, with Keenan McCardle scoring twice and Reggie Barlow scoring from 3 yards out in the second quarter. At halftime, the Buccaneers led it 21-0, with a great offensive performance and another dominant defensive performance as they had done all throughout 2002 when they won their first Super Bowl in franchise history. With 5 minutes left in the game, the Bucs were leading at 35-14, and the game looked all but over. There was no possible way that the Colts could erase a 3-possession deficit this late in the fourth quarter, right? Well, the legacy of Peyton Manning grew tenfold on this day, because in one of the most improbable comebacks of all time, and maybe the greatest comeback of all time in Monday Night Football, with it either being this game or the 2000 Classic between the Jets and the Dolphins, the Colts came back. After a 3-yard touchdown run by James Monroe, a 28-yard touchdown catch by Marvin Harrison, and a 1-yard touchdown run by Ricky Williams, the Colts had it tied up at 35 apiece. The Colts seemed to have done the impossible, stunning everyone watching the game. I think when a lot of people watched that 2021 game, they flashed back to the 2003 game and felt a very similar feeling. Turns out, at least when it comes to how the game was going up until the end of regulation, as we're about to find out, those two games were almost identical. Let's start simple and then dive deeper into the comparisons later on, because trust me, some of these are almost uncanny. In 2003, the Colts-Buccaneers game took place at Raymond James Stadium in Tampa Bay. In 2021, the Bills-Buccaneers game took place at Raymond James Stadium in Tampa Bay. In 2003, the Colts-Buccaneers game was a nationally televised game, where theoretically, every TV in America could have tuned into it. In 2021, by the end of it, the Bills-Buccaneers game was nationally televised. Every market in America got a 4:25 game on CBS, whether it was this one or 49ers-Bengals. By the end of the 49ers-Bengals game, CBS switched to the Bills-Buccaneers game, making it nationally televised. In 2003, the Colts-Buccaneers game involved an AFC team with a winning record taking on a Buccaneers team that was the defending Super Bowl champion, as the Colts were 4-0 and was facing a Tampa Bay team that was coming off of a Super Bowl win against an AFC West team in the Oakland Raiders. In 2021, the Bills-Buccaneers game involved an AFC team with a winning record taking on a Buccaneers team that was the defending Super Bowl champion, as the Bills were 7-5 and were facing a Tampa Bay team that was coming off of a Super Bowl win against an AFC West team in the Kansas City Chiefs. Those are the obvious ones. Now let's dive into the weeds of this. In 2003, when the Buccaneers entered this game, the last game that they played was a road game against the Atlanta Falcons, where the Buccaneers won by double digits. Tampa won that one 31-10, and shut out the Falcons in the fourth quarter. In 2021, when the Buccaneers entered this game, the last game that they played was a road game against the Atlanta Falcons, where the Buccaneers won by double digits. Tampa won that game 30-17, and shut out the Falcons in the fourth quarter. In 2003, when the Colts entered this game, the last game that they played was a road game under the Sunday Night Football branding against the New Orleans Saints. The Colts won that game by double digits, winning at 55-21. In 2021, when the Bills entered this game, the last game that they played was a road game under the Sunday Night Football branding against the New Orleans Saints. The Bills won that game by double digits, winning at 31-6. The fact that both the Buccaneers and their opponent had the exact same opponents in their last game before this one is mind-boggling. And the comparisons only get crazier from there. In 2003, when the game started, the Buccaneers got the ball first, then punted it away to the Colts. The Colts punted on their first possession. Then on the second possession, the Buccaneers scored a touchdown after Keenan McCardle found the end zone. McCardle was in his second season with the Buccaneers, and the last team he played with prior to Tampa, 2 years before, was the Jacksonville Jaguars, who he played with in 2001. In 2021, when the game started, the Buccaneers got the ball first, then punted it away to the Bills. The Bills punted on their first possession. Then on the second possession, the Buccaneers scored a touchdown after Leonard Fournette found the end zone. Fournette was in his second season with the Buccaneers, and the last team he played with prior to Tampa, 2 years before, was the Jacksonville Jaguars, who he played with in 2019. In 2003, the Buccaneers scored 3 touchdowns in the first half and led it by 21, as they had a 21-0 lead over the Colts. In 2021, the Buccaneers scored 3 touchdowns in the first half, and they led it by 21, as they had a 24-3 lead over the Bills. The halftime deficit that the Colts faced in 2003 and that the Bills faced in 2021 was identical. In 2003, the Colts trailed the Buccaneers by 3 possessions midway through the fourth quarter. Then the Colts scored on their final 3 drives of the game without allowing any more points to stun the crowd and force overtime. In 2021, the Bills trailed the Buccaneers by 3 possessions midway through the fourth quarter. Then the Bills scored on their final 3 drives of regulation without allowing any more points to stun the crowd and force overtime. And by the time the game ended in 2003, Buccaneers quarterback Brad Johnson had a touchdown to interception ratio of +2, with 3 touchdowns and 1 pick. He completed 67% of his passes by going 26 for 39, and he had a passer rating of 106.6. By the time the game ended in 2021, Buccaneers quarterback Tom Brady had a touchdown to interception ratio of +2, with 2 touchdowns and no picks. He completed 67% of his passes by going 31 for 46, and he had a nearly identical passer rating that Brad Johnson did of 105.6. Everything about these 2 games was almost identical. From the quarterback stats, to the opponents faced before, to the makeup of the teams to how the teams score their points, this game was literally deja vu. However, there was one key difference, and it's big enough that there's a reason that the video is titled Almost Identical instead of Identical. because just as he has done throughout his entire career, Tom Brady has continuously found ways to destroy narratives. Obviously, there's one big difference between the 2003 game and the 2021 game. In 2003, the Colts finished the job in overtime. They scored, with Mike Vanderjagt hitting a 29-yard field goal in overtime to pull off the 3-possession comeback that still lives on roughly 20 years later as one of the most iconic games in the history of Monday Night Football, one of the greatest comebacks of all time, and one of the signature moments of Peyton Manning's storied Hall of Fame career. In 2021, the Bills could not finish the job in overtime, as they had to punt on their first possession, and they couldn't stop Tom Brady and the Buccaneers from marching down the field, with Brashad Perryman scoring from 58 yards out. Everything about the two games when it came to the pregame buildup and the regulation was identical, and then it all fell apart in the overtime period. Having said that, if you are a Buccaneers fan watching this game, or an NFL historian like myself, and we're getting very similar vibes throughout yesterday's fourth quarter from that famous 2003 Monday Night Football matchup, they were entirely justified. Your gut instinct was right. Besides the fact that both games involved 3-possession comebacks in the fourth quarter against the reigning Super Bowl champion Buccaneers, there were tons of other similarities that you may or may not have been aware of, but that added to the aura of this game and the deja vu aspect of it. The 2003 Colts Buccaneers comeback and the 2021 Bills Buccaneers comeback were almost identical, minus the part about who ended up winning the game. But as familiar as yesterday's game felt, the most familiar aspect, without a doubt, has to be the fact that once again, Tom Brady found a way to win and come up in the clutch when it mattered most. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot, and be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes, link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at Jaguar Gator 9, and subscribe to 60-Second NFL History on YouTube. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.